Hi guys, so after showing a few videos of my Xugong V2 Pro in action with the DJI H3-3D mounted to it, I've had a number of people requesting via my blog and the forums that I do sort of a demonstration video of how it's all mounted, how it's all put together, and basically if that's an option that you would care to take, how you would go about doing it using my bracket. So in this video I'm going to demonstrate what you're going to need, how you do it, and some of the considerations including the wiring and how you can basically make your OSD still show through your gimbal, how you can make sure the tilt still works and things like that. So what I'll do is I'll break it into sections. First I'll just talk about the things that you're going to need to actually do this project. Then I'll go on to show you the wiring. It is pre-wired. I've already pre-wired mine, so I'm not going to rip the thing to complete pieces, but it's very simple wiring, and what I'll do is I'll put a wiring diagram as well, which will make people understand how it does. It's very simple. Anyone who's done anything with the NASA V2 before and the H3-3D gimbal will have no problems at all. There's no real major quirks or changes there. The only thing is that you have to just create yourself a bit of a custom cable if you want to be able to see the OSD through your GoPro. So if you're not using a flight camera, obviously that's something that you're probably going to want to do. If you have got a flight camera like the little 700 TVL that I've got in front of me here, you don't even have to do this cable. You can always have the option of just flicking via the onboard switch that's built into the Xugong V2 Pro. You can just flick it to that so you can see your OSD output, and then you can flick back to see the output of the gimbal. So anyway, so we'll go through those sections. So I'll talk about the parts first and then we'll go on from that. So prerequisites for this project: obviously you're going to need yourself a Immersion RC Xugong V2 Pro. Whether you've built it already or whether you're just about to build it, it doesn't really make a huge amount of difference. The only thing that I would say is that if you're about to build it, you can do this slightly cleaner by adding to some of the solder joints, which I'll talk about in a moment. If you've already built it, then you have the option of powering the gimbal through the balance port of your battery and making it fairly clean like that anyway. So it depends on how you want to do it, whether you want to strip it back down and rebuild it, or whether you just fancy a plug and play solution basically. So that's the actual frame itself. You're also of course going to need the DJI H3-3D or the H4-3D because they use the same mounting points as the Phantom 2, and that's basically the pattern layout for the bracket is all based around that, so shouldn't be any problems with that whatsoever. The version that you get does need to have the GCU unit, so if you've only bought the Phantom version that just comes with a gimbal and a cable, then unfortunately you're going to need to spend £100 extra because you are going to need that GCU unit. Depending on what NASA you've got as well, if you're using a NASA V2, that will come with a PMU V2 unit which has the CAN bus port already available to you, so you're set up no problem at all. If you have got the NASA Lite, then what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to buy the PMU V2, which I think is about 50-60 quid now, and you're also going to need to do the hack to upgrade the NASA Lite to the NASA V2 software / firmware, and then that will open up the CAN bus communication port once you've got your PMU V2, and that will allow the GCU to plug into it, and everything should be fine from that point on. So that covers the frame, the gimbal, and the flight controller side of things. From the point of view of hardware to actually do the mounting, obviously you're going to need the bracket. So this is the thing that you're going to be getting from Shapeways in this kind of matte, sort of rough, almost slightly rough finish to it. This is far beyond your standard home 3D printing using stereo lithography is the way that Shapeways does it. So it's laser sintered nylon. It's industrial grade process basically. It's rapid prototyping as it used to be called, and the quality is, you know, excellent compared to the kind of the home prints. Obviously I did home prints to do the original version of it and it worked fantastically. However, this is the product that you'll be receiving in theory within 7 to 10 days of ordering, depending on where you live in the world, because they ship globally. So anyway, so you need that, and you're also going to need, because of the rigidity issue, the thickness of that bracket means that the standard Xugong bolts are going to be a little bit too short. So what I recommend you do is get yourself at least 10 of these bolts, which are M3 by 10mm. So that's these little chaps here. I like to go for the ones that have got the slightly thicker hardened steel feel to it, because it means you're not going to strip the heads if you use them. I buy these in sort of bulks of 100 personally, because they always get used and they're really useful to have around in all sorts of shapes and sizes. I would ideally suggest you buy with that, if you buy 10 bolts, buy 10 nylock nuts, M3 nylock nuts, and buy 10 washers. Again, just get match sets, that's the way to do it. Go on eBay, they're dirt cheap and they'll arrive fairly quickly because of it, but get at least, you need at least 8 of those. So if you're going to do it in units of 10, get 10 or 20, but at least 8 is going to be what's required. And then optionally you can still use a 10, but ideally you need one 8mm one here, so you can actually probably get away with a standard one from the Xugong V2 Pro, so one of the red alley bolts. But if you're going to buy loads of them, I would suggest you get some 10mm, some 8mm, get an assortment, because in this hobby you end up using them all over the place, and it's never more annoying than when you don't have the right bolt at the right size when you're doing a project. So anyway, so that's the hardware side of things to be used. Now the other thing that you do need to consider is that when you actually mount this particular gimbal, you're going to have to raise the base of the Xugong up slightly. So the standard foot size, if I move the gimbal out of the way, the standard foot size is kind of like this. So that's the standard foot size, and this is the kind of height that you're talking about. Basically there's a number of different methods that you can adopt to do it. Some of them are very easy, some of them are very complicated. The easiest one, if you can find them, depending on what country you're in, is something like a simple standoff. Now these are 35mm, so I would reckon at least 35mm standoff. Ideally, if you can find something like this is a nylon standoff, however it's got brass inserts, and unfortunately this is a 2.5 an M2.5 fitment. So if you can find these with an M3 fitment, then you can just literally screw them into the points in the corners here, so where the actual frame goes together, you can just twist them in and that will work very well. And then what you can do, especially for the round ones, and you can do it for the hex ones as well, is you take your standard foot with a hole in it, and then you can just slide it down over the top, and then you've got yourself some rubber feet that will work very nicely for you. So a very simple solution, but one that that will solve your problem, and that will get the Xugong sat a little bit higher. The alternative, I do offer an option on Shapeways, or I certainly will do soon. These particular feet that you can see here, if I just unscrew that, these are 3D print options. So basically that tube is completely hollow all the way down to the base there, and inside that tube, it's going to be impossible to see unfortunately in the light, but inside that tube is just one of these M3 bolts. So it just bolts straight in through there and it just holds on, and then again you can just slide your foot all the way up to the top of that. And I think a pack of 4 of those is about, it's printing at about $8, $8 to $10, which is again too much money in my opinion for what they are. So if you can find yourself some nice cheap standoffs, they do just as good a job. You know, mine are more expensive, but they give you an option at least. I wanted to be able to offer people the option to at least have everything that they needed for it. So other than that, obviously if you're using a flight camera, I've got my little 700 TVL flight camera, which is going to actually mount onto the top of the bracket. But that, from the point of view of hardware and the prerequisites, pretty much covers everything. So let's now just take a quick look at the wiring situation. So this is the underside of my Xugong V2 Pro with all of this wired fully in. The only thing that's missing is the OSD wiring, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. Basically all you've got, as per my build video, where I've mounted the NASA PMU V2, I've just done it kind of just below this cross here. So this is the front of the frame, so I've just put it a little bit below that. The pick-off cable disappears down into the belly of the beast, where it can actually plug into the PDB board. Then there's the little extra cable, the pick-off cable, and then the GPS goes out of here. You've then got underneath it, leaving a little tiny space so the power cable can come through. This is the H3-3D GCU unit. The reason these two are quite close together is because the provided cable that come with the Zenmuse H3-3D is ridiculously small. You can see this is the one here, so that goes from the PMU V2 into there. I've actually laid it underneath some of these cables for a bit of neatness, and then it goes around to here. So that's why I've bunched them together. No harm in bunching them together. It keeps the weight centered, so you're not adding major weight to the center of gravity or anything like that. So it's quite a good way of doing it. Now the only thing you really need to consider to actually get the thing working is you've got to be able to power the GCU unit. So if you've already built your frame, almost certainly you would have wired two soldering points onto the PDB board to give you direct battery voltage to your PMU V2. Mine came through down here, a little bit hard to see here, but this big chunky cable here, this cable there actually is going down to the PMU, to the PDB board. What I've actually done is I created that with bullet points, so it goes PDB board to 2 bullet points, and then what I've done to actually get power to both of these then is I've basically branched each one of these off the bullet points themselves. So there's actually 4 cables going into the bullet points this side, on this side of the cable, so 2 for positive, 2 for negative, and one goes to one set goes to the PMU V2 and one goes to the GCU unit here. So whenever I plug the battery in, boom, direct power comes straight to it, and it fires up straight away. So the only other thing you really need to consider to actually just get it going is you need to route the 8-pin cable here, which goes in the side of it, through the frame, which is what I've done, and then to the front of the Xugong, and it just pops out here through the bulkhead, and then that's going to poke down through the bracket and plug into the back of the Zenmuse gimbal, and then you can just sort of feed the excess back down into the frame. It shouldn't cause any problems there. So that's what you need to do to actually get it going. The only other thing that you've got to consider from the point of view of wiring is that if you do want to be able to see the OSD on your Hero camera, then you need to consider how to do that. Now, it's not actually that difficult to do. With the Immersion RC kit, you get this anyway. So you get this little USB cable here. This is designed to go to the side of your GoPro. So if you're using the 2-axis gimbal, this plugs into the GoPro point here, labelled GoPro. And all you do is you then plug this into the USB port of the Hero camera. Now what that does is there's 3 cables, very simple. It takes video via the yellow cable, ground via the black, and power to the camera from the PDB board, 5 volts, to the Hero, so it charges your Hero camera. So basically what that now means is that we know that the OSD goes, basically you get the camera signal, goes into the PDB board, the PDB board then puts the OSD onto it, and then it comes out into the VTX. Now we've already got that link set up. The video transmitter and the PDB board are plugged in and connected already, so we know that the OSD is going to the video transmitter. All we need to be able to do is tap into the signal of the Hero on the Zenmuse gimbal. Now that's done very simply, because if we just grab that, on a Zenmuse gimbal, everything is all plugged through this USB port. So we're not going to use the Immersion RC cable. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave the Zenmuse exactly like this. And what this means is that the signal comes in through the camera. It then, video signal goes from this USB port through the back via the 8-pin cable sticking out the front here. That then travels to the GCU unit on the bottom, boom, here. So what we now need to be able to do is we need to be able to get the output of that signal to the PDB board, and then from the PDB board it will then go to the video transmitter, and it will go out to your goggles or your screen. So all we need to do that is we need to grab, I'll just put that down upside down. We use this port on the side, which is a little mini jack port. I'll just grab that there. That port there, and in the package that comes with the Zenmuse gimbal you will have 2 wires. Both of them will have a mini jack plug like this, and one of them will be bare-ended and one of them will have pre-existing connectors. Pre-existing connectors are designed to plug straight into IOSD Mini, so you can ignore that cable. So grab the one with the bare-ended wire, and that wire will have red, yellow, black, very similar in colour to the Immersion RC one. All you need is yellow and black. Do not use the red cable. Basically what you've got to bear in mind is that we are going to take this cable. So all I've done here is I've taken the yellow and black 2 pins here. We're going to take this, plug it in the side. So again, this is all, basically this is the video signal coming from the camera, from the gimbal, is going to go to this. So at the moment there's just ground and video, and then what we do is we create ourselves a wire which is very similar to this one. So what we do is we have one of these little 5-pin, I think they're 5-pin 25mm Molexes. I think that's what they're actually known as. If you want to, you can snip the end off the Immersion RC one. I personally hate the idea of doing that because I like to keep things stock, just in case I want to go back to the original wiring. I'll put a link to where you can get one of these. All you need is that's all you need, just the connector at the end of it. That's the only thing that's important there. Again, I'll just zoom in so you can see what it looks like. Don't get confused with micro JST, that doesn't work. From the research I've done, it is Molex that you want. It needs to be 5-pin, even though they actually only use 3 pins on here and actually 2 on here. So if we just take a look at what I've done with both of these. So on the right is the Immersion RC one, on the left is my cable. So I've just mimicked the black and yellow ports, so I know they're going to plug into the same place. Reason we don't use red one is that if we just use that red and we plugged red to red, what you end up doing is you basically put in 5 volts into the Zenmuse gimbal via the audio channel. You will burn stuff out. Don't do it. Leave red alone. Just what I've done on this particular wire here is that I've just snipped it really low down into the insulation, and I've just put a tiny dab of hot glue just to get rid of it, so it's just yellow and black. I cannot stress that point enough. So to make that work, then all we need to do is we take our 5-pin cable and get it the right way around, plug it into GoPro port like that, so you can see that's plugged in nice and neat there, and then basically we've got to get this cable back through the frame wherever you want to do it. I'll just do it temporarily under here for now, and we need to make that available underneath here so we can then plug the two together. So very crude, obviously I need to route this better. So that now plugs in, and by doing that you then get OSD through your GoPro camera as well as your flight camera if you're using your flight camera. Again, if you've got a flight camera you don't necessarily need to do this, it just means you won't see your OSD on your GoPro, so it might be more faff than it's worth for many people if they are using a flight camera, but that's an option for you should you want to. So a little bit confusing there. What I'll do is I'll put a wiring diagram at the end of this whole video so you can see what I'm talking about, and hopefully that will help you out as well. Okay, so now all we need to do is actually get the bracket fitted to this, and obviously the Zenmuse fitted to the bracket. Now what I would suggest you do is, before you actually fit the bracket, is let's get everything set and fitted to it, and then what we'll do is we'll put it onto the frame. So all you need to do is get the upper part of your Zenmuse bracket, don't have the gimbal on it, it's just going to get in the way, and then just mate it up underneath to the holes. You might notice that the version that you're looking at on screen right now doesn't have a V shape on it. That's just because this is one of my slightly earlier designs, and I wanted to have a little bit of extra bracing for the people out there, just to make sure that there wasn't any chance of any wobble or anything like that. But the fitment is absolutely identical, so you just line it up to that. Now you've got a choice at this point. You can either go bolts down. If you do that, you'll find, if I just zoom in here, unfortunately the light's awful in here, as you can see here, there's not a lot of space for the bolt, for the nut, sorry, just here. It will go, but kind of the easier way of doing it is to actually go in from underneath. So bolt down underneath through there, and then that fits perfectly in the groove, and then you will then put your nut and ideally a washer on top there. I'm going to do it the fiddly way because actually I prefer the neat look where I don't have the washers. Now I'm not using washers because I've got these big, thick headed bolts, but just bear in mind it will bite into the nylon a little bit, so just you know, do what you feel more comfortable with. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put all 4 of these on, and then we'll come back in a moment. Okay, so as you can see, nice and neat. I've done it the slightly crude way, so I haven't used washers there, but again, that's because I've got some nice big thick heads on there. Whether you do or not is completely up to you. There's plenty of space. As long as you use the 10mm, then that will give you space at the end. You can get away with 12, you can get away with longer if you want to, but minimum is about 10 to make it as neat as possible. Obviously you don't want this strutting out too far because it'll end up impacting with the gimbal itself. Anyway, they're all on, so so now we're in a position that we can now mount our 700 TVL camera. So to do that, all I'm going to do to make life easy for myself is I'm just going to grab a screwdriver, drop the camera, There we go, and basically there's 2 screws on the side, and I'm just going to undo those so I can get the bracket off. Okay, so with the bracket in hand, then all we want to do, mount it on the top plate, and you can see there's a recess. It's not a perfect fit recess because I didn't want to make it completely airtight, just in case they change any of the fixtures for this. And obviously there's other ways that people can mount these, and not everyone has a 700 TVL camera. So this is where I get the 8mm bolt. I'm just going to drop that down through there, and then because I'm going on this side I am going to use a washer for this one. And now I just need to do the nut up. Okay, so bracket is mounted, nice and clean. And then we just have to put the camera back on, which I can do either now or I'll do it at a later date. So I'm going to do that last so it doesn't get in the way. And anyway, that is the bracket all kind of pre-prepped and ready to go. So now what we need to do is we need to just fit it to the top board. So fitment to the top board, nice and straightforward. I'll just zoom in a little bit so you can see a bit better. Very easy and very similar to actually mounting it normally. So we just take our Xugong encapsulating nuts and pop them in underneath. Make sure they're seated quite well. Now anyone who's put one of these frames together will know they do have a tendency to sometimes give you a bit of jip, so just be aware. Okay, so that's all 4 of those there, and then all we need to do is again 10mm hole, and let's just slide this cable. So basically you see there's a hole here, this hole here, that's where the black ribbon cable is going to go, so feed that through there. Then just slide this onto it, spin it around so you can hopefully see what's going on. So we're sliding it on there, line it up with the holes that are already there. You might have to push slightly on the rubber dampeners, and then just loosely put 1 bolt in there, and then do the same on the other side. Just to be sure that they are biting. Which that is. And the last one. And then you just need to tighten them up. Okay, so you can see now if I turn it upside down, there you go, so 4 points there, nice and snug. And then finally all we need to do for the actual gimbal, of course at this point if you're doing the legs you need to make sure that your legs are you know, giving you the ground clearance that are required. So if you've got your standoffs, do that. If you've bought my legs, then by all means fit them as well, very simple to do. And then basically we just need to pop these in here. So these are nice, the white ones are very soft and easy to do. And in fact what I'll do is I'll turn this upside down. And we'll do it this way round. So ribbon cable, plug that in. And push the excess back. And then it's just a case of popping popping these on. And there we go. So that is our gimbal fitted, and as you can see, I'll just scoot that back a little bit. There's plenty of wiggle room. Bear in mind that in flight this is going to always be stable anyway. So this, with the 35mm standoffs and the rubber feet, gives us enough space. That will be perfectly enough space for it to do its calibration as well. It won't hit the ground there. Obviously make sure you're not taking off on anything rough or anything like that that's going to stick up on it. But that's the basis of it. So the only other thing that I need to do now is just mount my Fat Shark camera. Make sure it's the right way round. Slide it into the bracket. On that side. Okay, and there we go. All we got to do is just plug that in, and that's it. Everything done. You should now have a Zenmuse capable Xugong V2 Pro.